For decades, Iran's Air Force has been a shadow of its former self. Its fleet is a museum of aging American jets from before the 1979 revolution and a handful of Soviet-era planes. The country has been under international sanctions for years, making it almost impossible to acquire modern military hardware. So when news emerged that Iran might finally receive new fighter jets, it felt like a significant development. The long wait seemed to be over. Iran has been looking to modernize its military. New aircraft are at the top of its list. This is a country that sees itself as a major regional power, yet its air capabilities have lagged far behind its neighbors. The delivery of Russian MiG-29s is not the game-changer many in Tehran hoped for. Any new equipment helps, but these jets will do very little to shift the strategic balance in the Middle East. The MiG-29, even in modern variants, is a fourth-generation fighter. It's entering a battlefield dominated by fifth-generation technology. Israel, Iran's primary adversary, flies the F-35E Adir, a stealth fighter and a quantum leap in air combat. A few dozen MiG-29s do not close that gap. They highlight how far behind Iran truly is. The problem is not just numbers, it's the whole ecosystem of modern air warfare. Advanced sensors, network data links, sophisticated electronic warfare suites. MiG-29s, formidable in their day, are outmatched. They're a tactical fix to a strategic problem. For Iran, these jets are more political than military, a demonstration that Tehran can still procure weapons despite Western pressure. Practically, they won't let Iran challenge Israeli air superiority. Symbolic victory, not strategic. Headlines will focus on the jets, but the story is more complex. Context matters. Iran is adding older tech to an already outdated arsenal. That does little to deter a technologically superior Israel. The military imbalance stays in place. Iran is playing catch-up while rivals are laps ahead. MiG-29s are a small step on a dead-end path. The strategic reality, these jets are simply not enough to change Iran's precarious position. Let's look at the technical details. The MiG-29's primary long-range weapon is the R-77 missile. The R-77 is often compared to the American AMRAAM. Its effectiveness depends on the aircraft's ability to find and track a target. The MiG-29's radar is a known quantity. It can be detected and jammed by advanced EW on the F-35. The Israeli F-35Y is a stealth aircraft, designed to be nearly invisible to radar. An F-35 pilot will almost certainly see the MiG first. The MiG pilot will have no idea they are being targeted. This creates a fundamental mismatch. The F-35 can engage the MiG from beyond visual range with high probability. The Iranian pilot would have little to no warning. Iran might try to use ground-based radars to guide the MiGs. Those radars are stationary targets. They're highly vulnerable to standoff weapons. They're also vulnerable to stealth aircraft. Israel has a long history of targeting and destroying such networks. Relying on them is a gamble. Even the most advanced MiG-29 variants won't fix the core issue. Improved engines, improved avionics. The airframe itself is not a stealth design. It will always have a much larger radar cross-section than the F-35. No amount of upgrades changes that basic physics. You cannot turn a fourth-generation fighter into a fifth-generation one. Like putting a modern engine in a classic car. It might go faster in a straight line, but it won't handle like a modern sports car. Iran would be investing in a platform with inherent unfixable limitations. MiG-29s, even best case, are an insufficient answer. They are a stopgap, not a long-term solution. Useful for border patrols, useful for engaging less sophisticated adversaries. But in direct confrontation with a state-of-the-art air force, they're at a severe disadvantage. The technological gap is too wide to bridge. Pilots would be sent on missions with a very low chance of survival, a fact Iranian planners must surely understand. Given the limitations of Russian hardware, one must ask, why not look elsewhere? China, for instance, offers the J-10C fighter. This is a much more modern aircraft, often described as a 4.5 generation jet. It features a more advanced AESA radar, which is harder to detect and jam. It also has a wider array of sophisticated munitions. The J-10C is a closer peer to Western fighters like the F-16 and would represent a more significant leap in capability for Iran than the MiG-29. This brings up an interesting question about Iran's procurement strategy and its geopolitical alignments in an increasingly complex world. The choice of Russia over China is revealing. It may have less to do with the technology itself and more to do with long-standing political and military relationships. Iran and Russia have been allies of convenience in places like Syria. They share a common interest in pushing back against American influence. However, this partnership has its limits. China, on the other hand, has a growing military-industrial complex and is eager for new customers. Pakistan, for example, has deepened its defense ties with Beijing, acquiring the J-10C to counter India's new Rafale jets. Why hasn't Iran followed a similar path, choosing a more capable platform? Another major issue for Iran is the vulnerability of its air bases. Any new fighters, whether Russian or Chinese, need a place to operate from. These bases are fixed, known locations. They are prime targets for precision strikes. Israel has demonstrated the ability to conduct long-range operations, and its F-35s are perfectly suited for penetrating enemy airspace to destroy high-value targets on the ground. So, even if Iran acquired a fleet of advanced jets, they could be destroyed before they ever got off the runway. This is a critical weakness in Iran's defense posture that a few new planes cannot solve. This vulnerability makes Iran's strategic choices even more puzzling. A partnership with China might offer not just better aircraft, but also more advanced air defense systems and construction techniques for hardened aircraft shelters. Yet Tehran continues to lean on Moscow. This suggests that Iran's decisions are guided by a complex web of factors, including political trust, historical ties, and perhaps even financial arrangements. But from a purely military standpoint, the choice to stick with aging Russian designs over more modern Chinese alternatives seems to be a strategic misstep, one that leaves Iran exposed. The story becomes even more complicated when you consider the relationship between Russia and Israel. Despite Russia's alliance with Iran in Syria, Moscow and Tel Aviv maintain surprisingly close military and political ties. Israel has often coordinated its airstrikes in Syria with the Russian military to avoid accidental clashes. Russia, for its part, has been careful not to provide its most advanced weapons systems to Iran's proxies. This delicate balancing act means that Russia is not a fully committed patron for Iran. Moscow has its own interests to protect, and those interests sometimes align more with Israel than with Iran. This raises a critical question. Would Russia truly support Iran in a conflict with Israel? It seems unlikely. Russia's sale of MiG-29s to Iran may be more about generating revenue maintaining influence than about fundamentally altering the regional military balance. Moscow knows that these jets are not a threat to Israel. It is a transactional relationship, not a deep strategic alliance. Iran is paying for hardware that looks good on paper but offers little real advantage against its main adversary. Russia gets cash, Iran gets a false sense of security. For Iran, this reliance on Russia creates a military illusion. Tehran can project an image of strength by parading its new jets, but its military leaders know the truth. They are being sold equipment that is a generation behind what their primary opponent is flying. This is not a pathway to parity, it is a recipe for disaster in any potential conflict. The real problem for Iran is not just a lack of modern jets, but a lack of a coherent strategy to address its profound technological and strategic disadvantages. The country needs a complete overhaul of its military doctrine and procurement, not just a few new planes. In the end, the conclusion is clear. Iran needs far more than a handful of old fighter jets to challenge Israel's military dominance. The delivery of MiG-29s is a minor event, not a major turning point. The strategic balance of power in the Middle East remains unchanged. Iran is left with an air force that is largely obsolete bases that are vulnerable to attack, and an ally in Russia whose loyalties are divided. Tehran is chasing a mirage of military power, investing in solutions that provide political talking points but fail to address the stark realities of modern warfare.
Smash that like button, drop your thoughts on latest military in the comments, and subscribe for more deep dives into global power plays. Because here at Intel Prime, we know power isn't always loud, but it's always strategic.